Today's episode of the Our Hen House podcast is being sponsored by our partner, A Well-Fed World. A Well-Fed World is a hunger relief and animal protection organization chipping away at two of the world's most immense, unnecessary, and unconscionable forms of suffering. The suffering of people hungry from lack of food, and the suffering of animals used and abused for food. Mending our unjust food system is a critical part of solving the world's most destructive and persistent problems. Fortunately, the plant-based foods that promote health and well-being are the same foods that conserve resources to better feed the world while reducing greenhouse gas emissions and protecting the environment. A well-fed world provides the means for change by empowering individuals, social justice organizations, and political decision-makers to embrace the benefits of plant-based foods and farming. Learn more at awfw.org.
Our hen house is a squawking house. Our hen house is their hen house. Our hen house, ooh, it's a funky fresh house. Our hen house is your hen house.
My name is Jasmine Singer, and I'd like to welcome my co-host, Marianne Sullivan.
Hello, Jasmundo.
We were at Indian Road Cafe the other day in Inwood, which is in northern Manhattan where we live. And
just jumping right into this story, aren't you?
Well, because there's always like the how do you feel? Oh, I'm stressed. I'm too busy. How do you feel? I'm stressed. I'm too busy. We're arguing. You're making me do this on Sunday night yet again.
That was my part you just read.
I know, but let's just skip it and talk about coconut milk. Can we agree that if we had rambled that, it would have been something like what I just said?
That's not anything like, I was going to say I was great.
How are you?
I'm great.
That's bullshit. We were at Indian Road Cafe.
I'm great and grateful.
Yeah. We were at Indian Road Cafe the other day, and
Which is our favorite little restaurant, except that it's not vegan.
Well, it's not. But they have been very, very vegan friendly. And when you live at the tippy top of Manhattan, there's not a whole lot happening up here. Not like when we used to live in Soho and then Brooklyn.
And that was before by Chloe opened her, soon to be 3 restaurants
on our street
within a block of where we used to live.
Yeah, damn her.
Nice move, Chloe.
I want a time machine. So Indian Road Cafe used to be so vegan friendly, and we went recently. We're like, what's going on? They don't have the vegan desserts. They don't have my favorite draft beer, but that has nothing to do with vegan. They don't. But suddenly we realized that the vegan things were coming off the menu. And so we talked to the server about it, who was very friendly. And she said they had a new chef and a new pastry chef. And so we, tried very hard to work our vegan magic.
They did have one. They had a vegan appetizer and a vegan entree.
Right. It's not unfriendly, but it used to be a lot friendlier.
They're marked vegan, which I always appreciate.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. And it's very, very, very good. But she said, oh, the Thai curry, the tofu Thai curry is not on the menu anymore.
Which used to be one of their vegan specialties,
right,
which I had totally forgotten about, which
was
totally delicious.
This is like one of those locavore bullshit places. And she said the chef won't have it on the menu because it's coconut milk and it's not sustainable.
Don't get me started.
Which is pretty much what you said to her.
That's exactly what I said to her. Don't get me, or do get me started. I know there are some vegans who prefer not to use coconut milk because in Thailand, they use monkeys to harvest them, which is like disgusting and horrible. And I totally can get behind that. Other than that, and that's not all coconut milk in the world. Other than that's just, I hope a small percentage. Other than that, what is his problem with coconut milk? Is it that it's not local?
Well, and because so much of their shit is local and all that.
So the totally ridiculous thing is that they have all this meat and dairy and eggs, which they think is local, which even that gets into the whole issue of even if it's local, what does that really mean? Where's the feed from? And even if it is local, it's just fucking bullshit. It's much, much more environmentally damaging than coconut milk.
I'll use this opportunity to shout out James McWilliams' book, which he has evolved a lot in his thinking since then. But I still very strongly recommend people read Just Food, where locavores get it wrong and how we can truly eat responsibly, sustainably.
Yeah, well, and also, his newer book, The Modern Savage, which is not so much about the environmental aspects, but about the complete inhumanity local small time production.
Yeah.
Production, as they like to call it. Production, i.e. murder.
Yeah. So, but I just very strongly recommend that you follow James McWilliams if you don't already. Fortunately, not everybody is anti-vegan. I got an email in my email box, which is a good place to get email, from Tarte, the cosmetics company. And it said, Tarte loves vegans. And Tarte is very vegan friendly, but it's not exclusively vegan yet.
So did they somehow know you're on some vegan list, and is that why you got that?
No, that's the thing. I was like, oh, it's a vegan email. But it wasn't. I mean, it was a vegan email, but it was just coincidentally a vegan email.
Are you sure they couldn't track you down? I don't know.
Well, they did ask me for my cholesterol. Yeah. So I have a couple book updates. My book came out, and the...
Did it really? Your book came out? What?
You and Michael Herron are assholes.
You wrote a book?
You and Michael Herron should just text each other and make fun of me all the time.
Yeah, well, I wonder why the two people who talk to you the most in the world are being assholes to you.
Yeah, well.
Why would that be?
So I had the New York City launch since we last recorded this, and I also began my book tour. And I'm back as we speak. I just got back today, and I'm leaving again. And so we're here for like 5 minutes.
Me. I don't get to go on a book tour.
Everyone in the world is calling you and concerned about you. Like they're practically bringing you casseroles. Because they want to take care of you. Because
practically bringing me casseroles means nobody's brought me a casserole. What are you talking about?
You're gonna get a casserole now. So the New York City launch was at the
which would be like really a bonus because it's not like you make me casseroles.
You don't make me casseroles. Oh, I forgot to tell you something. When I did my DC event the other day, Compassion Over Killing, one of the questions was from a podcast listener, and she said, when you break out into song in the middle of ramblings, and Marianne does as well, is that coming just from you, or is that also coming from Marianne, and do you plan it? And I said, Marianne and I are like two old 85-year-old gay men, and that is where we bond, that and activism. And so I made the point that you have just as much, if not more, of an understanding and appreciation of oldies and musical theater as me.
Thank you, sweetheart. That's very thoughtful. I certainly don't have the training or the voice.
Well played. You're backpedaling. I'm so tired right now that my voice is not in pristine condition. You're not letting me have my 18th cup of coffee a day. It's like abuse.
Yeah, you're definitely in a bad place with coffee.
Well, so my New York City launch happened the other day at Alexander Gray Associates.
So good. I mean, that was a great party.
That was a fantastic party. And Beyond Sushi was the caterer. And there was just so many wonderful people there from the world of animal rights and also so many other pockets of my life. It was, unlike the other events, it was really, very much of a party. So there were people there who just heard about it or podcast listeners as well. But there were a lot of my friends and family there. And there was bubbly wine, and there was just an overall celebration feeling, and I did my first reading ever, and there photos forthcoming. It was so fun. And then I headed off to Washington, D.C. On the Amtrak, I got a vegan burger, and right before I had gotten on the train, I also got a coffee with almond milk at Dunkin' Donuts. And, I know that both of these things exist. We've gotten them before, but just every now and then you stop and you're like, whoa, look at what's going on here. It's so fun. Actually, when I was at the train station, I was going up the escalator at Penn Station, and there was a woman coming down the escalator, and she had on a no fur button. And I was looking at her. I was about to say something when she saw me looking at her, and she's like, I listened to your podcast.
Oh my God. You didn't tell me that. That's unbelievable.
It was so funny and fun and made me feel really happy. Like we're everywhere. We're just peppered throughout Penn Station and all of that. Compassion Over Killing was so great. I've told this story before, but my DC launch was at Compassion Over Killing, and when I was 24, COK was working on a campaign, and I helped out by going into grocery stores and taking photographs of egg cartons that were certified
animal care certified.
Right, animal care certified. Thank you. And it was, bullshit. So I took photographs of it and sent them in to Erica, and she sent me a t-shirt, like a COK t-shirt. And it was just this time, and she was so appreciative, and she sent the warmest email, and it always stuck with me. And I went on to work for Farm Sanctuary as the campaigns manager, and I thought, I'm going to treat my volunteers how Erica treats hers. It just really helped shape my early days as an activist, so that was great. And I had such a great time. It was standing room only at COK, and two people I went to high school with showed up.
That's so cool.
I haven't seen them in 20 years. They saw the event on Facebook.
Were they in your book?
Well, one of them, Sonia, who lived across the street from me, she is mentioned like briefly, and then she's in the acknowledgments because we were actually friends, and she came with her 2 kids, and like it was so bizarre. And then someone else came and he brought me flowers. It was so sweet. It was just like I was so moved. And the next day I actually hung out with Dawn Moncrief from A Well-Fed World, who is they're sponsoring the podcast now. I love A Well-Fed World and their work that they do. I just think it's revolutionary and nobody else is doing it. And I got to eat dinner with Dawn at Busboys and Poets, and it was so delicious. And the next day we got to go to Evolve, and I had soul food. I don't have vegan soul food too often, or I don't have non-vegan soul food either. That sounded weird. But I had like mac and cheese, just a little side of it, and then like a whole bunch of amazing greens. It was phenomenal. You should be jealous.
I stayed home. Rose and I watched television.
Good. You were being, productive in your own way. Taking a load off. That's good. But then I had another event in DC at Alyssa Free's house. She's a flock member, and it was a flock event. So I got to meet some of our DC flock. That was great. And it was just, we have a bunch of the flock events coming up too throughout. We have one this week in LA, and it's just my favorite kind of thing. I don't think people realize that in addition to it being a safe space and an exciting space for you, it is for me as well, especially given the tour that I'm now on, to have that kind of ability to check in with people. And I was so inspired by people. There were people there who worked for HSUS and PCRM and PETA and just a whole bunch of other organizations and animal rights and other social justice issues. And I'm sitting there like, I am not worthy. It's so surreal sometimes to be in this position around such incredible people.
I stayed home. Rose and I watched television.
Good job.
No, actually, that's not true. We had dinner with friends.
Ha! So there was some interesting press that came out. There was an article in Women's Health about my book that came out. The weird thing is they interviewed me for it, but then it came out in first person as if I had written it. That was so bizarre, but it's just the first question that...
It's good. It's like all about weight.
Yeah, that's the thing. My book isn't.
I think that's fine. I mean, all you got to do is get people to buy the book, because then they'll find out more about animals and veganism from the book. They don't have to find it out from the article. And the article, I mean, Women's Health is huge. Yeah. Huge.
10 million hits. It is. I'm very excited about it. My audiobook is out now. You could download it on Audible, so that's weird. But anyway, finally, I just want to quickly go through some of the events coming up this week, and then we'll jump back into what we're squawking about today.
Oh, and I stayed home, and Rose and I watched television.
Good. Rose went under the house, I heard.
Yeah, she went under the house. That was unusual. I think she was looking for an animal.
Or me. She could have been looking for me. I have a flock event in LA this week.
She didn't find an animal.
And then I have the LA launch
television
at Mercy for Animals on the February 11th. I have did that actually will have passed by the time this airs. So I'm going to just jump ahead. So February 13th, I have an event in San Jose, a private event.
Oh,
and then
do you know the way?
I'm going to get a car. But I got your joke. Oakland Public Library on Valentine's Day, the 14th, from 2 to 4. I hope you join us.
I'm going to be staying home watching television with Rose.
It's going to be, everyone could text you that they love you. I'm going to be lonesome too. And then on the 15th,
poor you.
I'll be at Animal Place's Vegan Republic on Monday the 15th before heading home. So that's exciting. That's in Berkeley. And
I'll still be home watching television with Rose.
And then the following week, I'll be on February 21st. I'll be at VO2 Vegan Cafe in Cambridge.
I'll be with you.
Yeah, you'll be with me because you're a judge in the animal law moot court at Harvard again.
I get to do things too, and Rose is coming too.
Yes, she is. And then on February 28th, I'll be in Montclair, New Jersey at Watchung Bookstore. I have other... March is loaded, but I'm not going to talk about that yet because I'm starting to have a little bit of a seizure, yeah. All right, but let's talk about this, though. There was this article in the New York Times, and it was called, "Is a Cow a Who or a Witch? Our Standards Editor Weighs In." And this article was instigated by an inquiry that they got from Peter Singer. And they said, He said that in his own writing, he used who to emphasize the notion of animals as individuals. He was, quote, pleasantly surprised, he said, to see this headline on the Times' website with an Associated Press article about an escaped cow in Queens. And the title read, Cow Who Escaped New York Slaughterhouse Finds Sanctuary. And then Peter asked the Times, does the Times have a policy on the use of that or who for animals? So the article goes on to explain their position on it.
I think the first thing to note is the fact that this article got written. I just think that's a sign of the times, that it doesn't have everything in it that we want, but I actually think it's exactly right, because it does. Their style guide does not go as far as Peter Singer would recommend, but they point out that their style guide is not meant to promote an agenda, but to reflect widely accepted familiar usage. And I mean, I think that they never used to use who, and they never used to use he or she. They only used it, and they only used that or which. And I think that's changed, but only for some animals who have been given a name, or regarding the he or she, animals where the sex of the animal is specified. And otherwise they stick with it and that or which. I mean, I think that really reflects society's viewpoint, that society has come to think of, the animals who are beloved and who have names and who have a place in our society, an honored place in our society, as whose, who, apostrophe S, or who, S, and the rest of them as its. And that's where we are. So the Times is reflecting that, which is depressing in a way, because obviously they are all whose. But I think it's really a change. I mean, I don't remember that ever happening before, and they don't talk about how long that's been in the style guide. And so I think just the fact that they wrote this whole article about it is just kind of cool too. The other thing that they sorted out was the question of whether a male bovine can be a cow, which I've always worried about because I don't want to sound stupid, but apparently they can. You can call individual. It's just completely bizarre that there is not a common non-gendered singular term in English, except that because cow really refers to a female, but the Times says that in common usage, cow refers to both males and females, so you can do that. So that's a relief to me. Yeah, isn't this unbelievable that they're talking about this in the New York Times?
Well, and otherwise, if they don't know whether the animal is a female or a male, they call the animal it, right?
Yes, it. And we've all seen that, and we've all objected to it. And with humans, of course, they would do he or she, but now there's also the question of people whose gender is uncertain and who prefer their gender to be uncertain. And we recently saw a style guide, not in the New York Times, but an article about a new style preference to use they in that situation. So in a situation where you might use they for a human, you would use it for an animal. This is getting pretty fucking complicated, I think.
Yeah.
We need a whole new set of pronouns, but that's not going to happen. I don't know how this is all going to sort out.
It is really interesting, though, for sure. And so I do want to say something about a couple who's, because I do know that they were she's. When I was in Washington, D.C., I was staying at Bruce Friedrich and Alcassandra's house, and it was so exciting to be staying with them because they're such heroes of mine. And I remember when I was like a tadpole activist going down to PETA, and I saw Bruce out in the corner.
Are you a frog activist now?
I am. I am. I advocate for frogs. And I saw Bruce in the corner, and I was like, oh my God, it's Bruce. And I was staying in his. Anyway, the reason I brought that up in this context is because they have these 3 darling cats. I mean, these cats are fabulous. And the cats are Tigger, Rena, and Angela Davis. And the cats are so fantastic that they just like talk about, well, not nothing else, but kind of nothing else. Yeah, Rose looks like she broke her neck, but she didn't. She's just in a weird position. And at one point I was like lovey-dovey with the cats, and I was like, oh, you cats. And they were like flashing a light so that the cats would play.
Cats were flashing?
No, Bruce and Alka were flashing lights so that the cats would like jump after the light. And I was like, you guys are dopey. That's a light.
Were you talking to the cats or to
To the cats.
This is very unclear. You
And-
need to get your pronouns clear.
And Alka and Bruce both looked at me, and it was like Alka said, "I think you've overstayed your welcome now." And Bruce said something which I won't actually repeat here because I want to keep his reputation somewhat intact. But let's just say I had crossed a line.
Be careful with the kitties.
Yeah, definitely. So a few weeks ago, we mentioned that we would be happy to answer people's questions if they had any. And we got 2 letters. And
We got 2 letters asking 2 questions that we can't answer.
right, exactly. So we're going to starting
a policy of not answering people's
Yeah,
questions.
so if you'd like us to not answer your question, then email us at info@ourhenhouse.org or just go to ourhenhouse.org and go to the contact page and the letters will get to us. But here are what follows are 2 questions that you all sent that we can't answer. But we're going to talk about it anyway. Oh, and yeah, okay. Feel free to send your questions in because why not just let us not answer it on the air. Hi, Jasmine and Marianne. First of all, thanks for the podcast. I love it. Thank you. A few episodes ago, you mentioned that if we had ideas, suggestions, topic. All right. I'm going to skip that part because I just kind of said that. This one you may have already covered. I only started listening a few months ago, but it's a big issue for many of us. And it's when we have a non-vegan child, usually because we are the lone vegan in the family. My ex-husband and father of my 5-year-old son is a pretty unconscious meat eater, as is his family, my son's grandma and aunt. My son eats meat because they do, but at my house, he eats vegan, and he knows I'm vegan and what that means. Of course, I pray he decides to go vegan on his own, but in the meantime, it kills me to watch him consume meat, bless you, when we are at a restaurant with his dad or his grandma or at her house. He is well aware of what meat is, but I think in his child brain, he figures if his dad and grandma, who are his heroes basically, eat meat, it can't be that bad or that wrong. And then there's the question when he is ready to be told and shown the horrible, traumatic, and ugly truth about factory farming. I don't want to go on and on here. It's a complex issue. Long story short, I would love to hear what you think about this or what any relevant guests who can speak to this issue might say about it. I know from my Facebook groups that there are plenty of us vegans out there with non-vegan kids, and it's an important issue for us. And then she goes on, I just want to quickly mention, this is Rachel from Germany who's speaking here. She goes on to ask if we ever had Steve and Derek of Esther the Wonder Pig on our podcast. And we have, Rachel. So go to ourhenhouse.org and type in Esther the Wonder Pig and they'll show up. And yes, we do know that they have a book coming out. And in fact, I offered a blurb for that book, and we will be having them on again in the context of that book. But I digress. Back to the issue at hand.
You're avoiding the question.
Yeah, because I don't know how to answer it. I don't have kids. I don't know. I'm going to get such hate mail.
I think it's a little late for Rachel.
Yeah, I guess she already has the kids, so she has to keep it. No,
This is going from bad to worse.
I'm kidding, Rachel. Kind of.
There's no good. I think you're doing everything you can. I mean, you're setting. It's not clear. It sounds like you went vegan after you married the non-vegan. I mean, of course, marrying a non-vegan, you would be entering into this problem and know you were getting into. But if you wake up to veganism after you're already married to somebody who's not, and you can't convince them, and now he's your ex,
You're fucked.
there's just. I think you're doing everything you can. I mean, you're setting a good example. You're trying. I mean, I don't know what age you can tell your child this, but I trust you to know your child. You sound like a very good mother, and to know how much information you can give him and when. And he's going to, kids make their own decisions, and that's what he's going to do. And I'm sorry that it's going to break your heart if he makes the wrong one. But there's nothing you can do. He's not, it's this, we have to control what we can control, but you can't control this. The only thing that somebody could do, and this totally depends on your situation, but you mentioned that it's a problem when you eat out with his father and his grandma and at their house. Well, I mean, you don't have to be doing that. Or maybe you do in your situation. I just don't know. I mean, I'm not going to, that's something that you have to decide, but maybe you would be more comfortable not eating with them, doing other things with them, and explaining to your son why. But other than that, what are you going to do?
I just want to say too that I was being, snarky and mean a minute ago. I totally recognize that this has got to be just absolutely heartbreaking. And of course, I have friends who have who had vegan kids who they raised as vegan who stopped being vegan. So it's not like there would ever be a guarantee. So, I don't know if that makes you feel better or worse, but you don't necessarily know how it would come out no matter what. But I will say this, just like for us, community is really important. I think community for your son is really important, and having not only you, but other vegans in his life, kids, if that's at all possible. And I know that you're struggling with whether to talk to him about factory farming at this point, but there are a lot of kid-friendly books and movies and things like that out there. And of course, you can watch some of them with him, read them to him. I'm sure you already do that. But the importance of community so that he develops friendships and best friendships and close friendships with people like him so that he doesn't always feel like the pariah, that's going to help him a lot. And, one day he might hopefully he'll make the decision to go vegan. It won't be that long from now. I do also think, that absolutely he should be vegan when he's with you, and you can explain why. Take him to sanctuaries and, let him make the choice for himself. I don't think you have another choice but that.
Yeah, that's all great advice. I mean, of course, you want to do everything you can to give him the information he can handle right now. And while maybe he's not ready to hear about factory farming, he's certainly ready to learn more about animals. And you're, as Jasmine said, you're probably doing that. I mean, and then ultimately, once you've done everything that you can, you just have to face the fact that you don't control this. So move on to something that you do control. And we all have to spend our time on doing the things that are going to result in the most help for animals. And so maybe worrying about this situation that you really can't control, once you have done everything that you can, it's just not worth it. Just move on and face the fact that there are very, very difficult things, difficult choices for us all.
Yeah, and I just want one quick tiny little addition. I said visit sanctuaries, and I guess it's possible that there aren't any near you. I don't know where you live exactly. So visiting shelters, I think, is a great thing to do also, because it doesn't have to be specifically farmed animals if it's not available. It doesn't have to be like a farmed animal sanctuary or nothing, I guess is my point. And
don't beat yourself up.
Yeah. No, you sound like an amazing person, and I have no doubt that the apple doesn't fall far from the tree. So good luck to you, and thanks for listening from Germany, Rachel. And listen to Steve and Derek on our podcast. They were so good. All right, our next question that we can't answer is from Mary, and this is actually the first one we got, which we had a good chuckle about because we get asked this at every single talk we give, every single one. And we have talked about this on the podcast before, so I'm gonna kind of keep it short, but you said, I was wondering how other vegans deal with feeding their companion cats. Since cats are carnivore obligates, I am perfectly happy for her to eat meat. However, she is an indoor cat, and I have to provide that food. I was just wondering if anyone had any thoughts or experiences or suggestions or ideas. Well, I'm going to point you to an article that I think that Anne Green probably sent you. If not, she will. And it's on fatgayvegan.com, and it's by Louise Wallace, who's an amazing activist. And I chatted with Louise over email after she wrote this because we posted it. And it's called Vegan Cats, Pause for Thought. Great title, PAWS. And Louise had actually written this article as an expose, but from a very open-minded journalistic piece. She was open-minded, but she was open-minded, but she was also a little bit skeptical because she was like saying, well, they're obligate carnivores. And I very strongly recommend you go to fatgayvegan.com and look up this article, Vegan Cats, Pause for Thought. If you just Google like Louise, vegan cats, I think it'll come up also. And of course, she is saying that she was really surprised at how things have really come around in terms of different types of vegan foods that are available for cats. And, whether or not you want to do that is totally your choice. It's somewhat of a philosophical issue. Like, do we kill the cats or do we kill the chickens? Because obviously there is a danger in turning your cat vegan. But we love our cats, so we don't want to put them at risk. And there is something kind of inherently speciesist about us. And I guess there's no right answer, and you got to kind of take it case by case. And I don't, when I had a cat, I was vegan. This was years ago, and the cat had I don't think that we were as far along with options for vegan cat food as it seems we are now from Louise's article. And the person who had this cat before me, who was also vegan, had tried to make her vegan, and she got very, very sick and almost died. So when I got the cat, I fed her cows because they were bigger animals. There's less suffering, and it was horrible and, unethical. But I did it. I didn't feed her chickens because of, the fact that a cow would go for... It's an awful rationalization that I'm just sitting here saying this. I don't think that there is a good answer to this. And I think that we shouldn't dwell on it that much. I think that it's just one of those situations that's sometimes a shade of gray, and there's not that many in animal rights, and this is maybe one of them. I do know people who have healthy vegan cats, and this article talks about healthy vegan cats. So I don't know the answer, and don't send me hate mail, please.
I don't have much to add to what you've already said. It's a tough question, and if you're worried about your individual, if anybody who's facing this problem is worried about their individual purity, I don't think it's a terribly important question. But there is the important question of we all try as vegans to act in a way that we want the world to be, and it's not clear how the world should be vis-a-vis cats. It's just not clear how to answer this question. Should they be vegan? Some people say no. I guess ultimately this will be answered when we get to in vitro meat, and we can produce animal protein for all obligate carnivores without killing animals. But until we get to that point, there's just no good answer to this. So do your best. Yeah. And then move on and go leaflet or whatever it is that you do to change the world for animals.
This article, though, Louise, it goes so much more in depth than we're going now, and I think it's amazing. I think it's the best thing that's ever been written about vegan cats. So definitely check that out, and I'll link to it on the article on the blog that corresponds with today's podcast. So let's transition into everybody's favorite segment, one that we like to call Rising Anxiety. Rising Anxiety. Rising Anxieties. Okay, what have we got here?
Well, our main article here is a huge, huge rising anxiety. And everybody in the meat industry is writing about this, but I'm just looking at the article in Meeting Place called Meat Matters by Hannah Thompson, who's their anti-animal rights person, or as she calls herself, the communications director for the Animal Agriculture Alliance. Meat Matters is the name of their new campaign and their new website, Meat Matters, because they're really upset. Because as Hannah starts off, she was searching online for examples of celebrities or public figures who eat meat and are proud of it. Unfortunately, it was slim pickings. Contrast that to the number of famous people you see touting their vegan or vegetarian lifestyles, and it can get pretty frustrating. Ha! Well, that's entertaining to hear. I'm glad to hear that these people are frustrated. And so then she comes to the conclusion, well, it's because everybody eats meat, so nobody has to be touting it. But, maybe it's really because nobody is really proud of eating meat. It's just that everybody does. So they go along with it, and they haven't really thought it through. But anyway, what they're going to do something about it. So they've started this campaign called Meat Matters. I mean, that's the name they came up with. Meat Matters. Okay. And they're providing a counter resource. And they're really, really anxious about Meatless Mondays because they're horrified at the idea that anybody should spend one day of their life not eating meat. Not much less one day of the week. Whereas, most of us in the animal rights movement are horrified that people would limit it to only one day a week. And they've got a Meat Matters pledge, which I've searched for online and I can't find, but somehow it allows you to spread on Facebook and other social media that you're a proud omnivore and that you're proud of your willingness to eat meat. And they're hoping to get some momentum and steak-loving celebrities on board to tell people that meat matters. And they've got a whole big website that tells you all what's great about meat and busting meat myths and telling you how sustainable meat is and encouraging you to take the pledge. Oh my God, these people are not only anxious, They're completely inept.
Oh my God.
It's very entertaining. Meat matters. There's a catchy slogan.
Speaking of catchy slogans, our next Rising Anxieties today is from the poultry site. Candid Camera, undercover videos on rise in poultry industry.
No shit. Yeah, they've noticed, and they're really upset about it. Not a lot to say here, just that there was a talk by some consultant about how undercover videos of poultry farms made by animal activists appear to be on the rise, and the videos are often, as they always say, taken out of context. What is the context that they could be taken in? I mean, they're taken in their facilities. That's the context. And what do you mean by context? And are intended to portray, quote, the worst of the worst, which apparently is not very hard to find because they seem to find it all the time. And this guy is, I sometimes wonder whether these people, like these consultants, are really very naive about what's really going on, because this consultant encouraged poultry operations to make sure they're hiring and training the right people who treat animals well and not give any activists any reason to make an undercover video. I think that maybe he's unaware that, that ship has just sailed. It's the entire system that requires horrifying cruelty to animals. They can't clean this up.
Our next story today is from Ad Age, not a Dodge. AdAge.com. American Egg Board seeks new PR agency after Hampton Creek debacle.
That kind of says it all.
Yeah.
Yeah. PR guys are out. Not surprising. I'm sure most of our listeners are aware of the complete mess that the American Egg Board, which is a quasi-governmental, quasi-industry-funded board to promote eggs, got into after it emerged that they were working with their PR agency to take out Hampton Creek foods in their egg-free mayo and other foods. So PR guys got fired. Let's hope they get indicted.
Okay, well, I'm going to switch gears now and talk a little bit about our hen house. I do want you to know that a brand new episode of the Teaching Jasmine How to Cook Vegan podcast came out this week, and we have a special co-host for this episode and next month's episode as well, and that's Chef Laura Delhauser, and she was such a great energy to have in the room, and it's a Valentine's Day just extravaganza, but it's not just for Valentine's Day. It's just love themed because 'tis the season, and it was just a really good time. Remember that you have to subscribe to the Teaching Jasmine How to Cook Vegan podcast separately from this podcast. I think the first few episodes they were in the same feed, but now they're in different ones. So that also means that if you like it and if you like this one, please leave us friendly reviews. Same thing for the Animal Law podcast with Marianne. You definitely got to check that out because it's just a great... Oh, I forgot to tell you this. One of our flock members was at the flock event in DC, and she is not a lawyer. In fact, she works for PCRM. anyone who was at the event, I hope you're chuckling now. That was an inside joke. Sorry, everybody else. And she said she loved the Animal Law podcast, even though she's not a lawyer.
That's really nice to hear. I've heard from other non-lawyers who say, just stop using the Latin phrases. And other than that, sometimes it's a little hard to follow, but basically people seem to really enjoy it. So I'm thrilled.
And you don't have to be a lawyer to enjoy the cooking podcast.
Though it helps.
Yeah. I don't know about that.
Meant.
I have no idea either.
Yeah. I have to say, I didn't understand your inside joke about...
No, I know.
She was... But
it was just for the people who were there.
The reason I didn't understand it is because I was at home with Rose watching TV.
Yeah. Happy Valentine's Day, by the way.
Thanks.
What are your big plans while I'm in California?
I think maybe I'll stay at home and watch TV with Rose.
What do you watch when you watch TV without me?
Wouldn't you like to know?
I could just check the Netflix thing. It's so funny because anytime we have a dog sitter, after they leave, we could see everything they watch because it's all on Netflix. And usually they're so much more sophisticated than us, and our cartoons are like 10 shows back because they were watching grown-up shows. Anyway, so we have the guests the guest that we were about to interview, well, it's kind of guests because her husband kind of pops in halfway through, which I didn't know was going to happen. So that was nice. It's so amazing. This is such an inspiring interview. And it's with Janette Murray-Wakelin and her husband, Alan. Alan Murray, he does join at one point, but again, I wasn't totally expecting that. So he just kind of came in the room. She's like, "Oh, my husband is here. Would you like to speak with him too?" And you know, these are people who will make you either feel really good about yourself or really bad about yourself, depending upon what kind of mood you're in today. So hopefully you're about to get as inspired as I am, because they're just, what they have done, you're not even going to believe it. And they're vegan, and they're raw vegan. Wait till you hear it. Janette Murray-Wakelin has been actively following a raw vegan lifestyle for over 14 years after she was diagnosed with cancer and was told she had 6 months to live. As a result, the lifestyle choices she made with the support of her partner Alan, who is also going to join us a bit today, set them both on a journey to optimal health. Throughout the year 2013, to inspire and motivate conscious lifestyle choices, to promote kindness and compassion for all living beings, and to raise environmental awareness for a sustainable future, veteran raw vegan runners Janette and Alan ran together around Australia, running 366 marathons each in 366 days, no days off. They're going to talk to us all about this today. It's just unbelievable, this story. Janette is also the author of the highly acclaimed book, Raw Can Cure Cancer, which is now in its 4th edition. And her second book, Running Out of Time, Running Raw Around Australia, was released in 2014. And they're both available through their website. You can learn more at rawveganpath.com. There's so much more to their story, too. I'm so excited about chatting with Janette and a little bit with Alan today. Welcome to our hen house, Janette.
Oh, thank you. It's my pleasure to be here.
It's really exciting to talk to you. We have been hearing about what you've been doing in the world for a long time now, and it is just mind-boggling. I'm so excited to learn about all of the many ways that you're working toward awareness and changing the world, and the unbelievable efforts that you've personally taken to really mainstream the idea of raw veganism as a way to prolong, improve, and help your life, but also just totally thrive. We have so much to ask you, but the starting point has to be the reason we first heard of you. Tell us about the year of running marathons.
That was in 2013. And yes, my husband, Alan, and I, we ran around Australia. We just moved to Australia and we thought, how are we going to get to see this huge country? And so I came up with the idea of running around it and bringing some awareness by running a marathon every single day until we get all the way around. And
was your husband like, I was thinking more of like a bus tour around the town?
Well, he said, I'm not sure that we can do that. And I said, well, we ran the length of New Zealand. We should be able to run around Australia. It's not that much bigger. And he said, let's do the math. So, 5 seconds later, he came back and he said, it's not happening. He said, you realize how far it is? It's, 16,000 kilometers, which is about 10,000 miles. And I said, well, let's just do the math again. And I divided it by, a marathon distance. And I said, it's perfect. It's 365. That's one a day for a year. And he just rolled his eyes and went, okay.
So I just I already have about 100,000 questions for you. I just can't imagine coming up with this idea. I've run 2 half marathons in my life, and I just think that it was the most difficult and ultimately rewarding thing I've ever done. I can't even fathom how it's humanly possible to run this amount. I mean, how is it even humanly possible to run 26 miles a day?
Well, obviously you've got to train, so you've got to be physically fit enough to be able to run a marathon a day. But to be able to run them consecutively like that, you have to have the right fuel. And that's where the raw vegan diet comes in, because it's completely, 100% nutrient laden, and everything we consume is giving us energy and fuel. And if we get it right, have it enough and at the right time throughout the running process, then you have no recovery time. So you can just keep going.
So do you mind my asking how old you are?
I'm 66.
You're 66. So you were in your 60s when you did this?
Yeah, 64, 65. Yeah.
And were you I assume you were a longtime runner and athlete before this happened?
Yes, I've pretty much been running all my life. I grew up with a lot of brothers, so you kind of have to keep up with those guys. But
yeah,
yes, I had already been a marathon runner, and the same with Alan, my husband, and we had done a few marathons. About 10 years previously, we had run the length of New Zealand, which is our home country, and that was 50 marathons, and I did it for my 50th birthday. I thought, well, what can I do for my 50th birthday? So that seemed like appropriate to run the length of your home country.
Wow. Yeah, that's what I was thinking that for my 37th birthday, which is
go for it.
Yeah, why not? I was actually thinking maybe like 37 shots of tequila, but I'm rethinking that after talking to you.
Well, I think if you did that, you wouldn't start your first marathon.
That's a very good point. See, we say it as it is here on our Hen House. But that was actually, so you actually had already ran 50 marathons. And what were there records? Did you kind of beat a world record?
Even when we ran the 50 marathons, the length of New Zealand, that had not been done before either by a female. But we weren't necessarily into, officiating it. But with this one, when we went around Australia, we realized at the halfway point, people were saying to us, this has got to be a world record. And I thought, no, it's not. People have run this far before. So we looked it up and found out that there was a world record for 365 consecutive marathons. And when we looked into it, we found out that these consecutive marathons were not won every single day of a year consecutively. So the word consecutive can be misconstrued. However, we thought, well, no one's ever run, around Australia. So this is not running a marathon somewhere each day. We were running a consistent line all the way around Australia. So each day when we stopped the marathon distance, the next day we started right at that same point. So there was a continuous run for 15,782 kilometers. So I'm not sure, 10,000 miles
Yeah.
And so that had never been done before. It had never been done by a couple together. So two people doing it, a male and female. No one of our age. Alan was 68 and he's 70 now and a lot younger. And so, and no raw vegan had ever done it before. And also we did it in barefoot shoes. So that was also...
I can't even walk to the bathroom barefoot. That's
well,
amazing.
We weren't barefoot itself. We were barefoot shoes.
Yeah,
so,
I put those on. I guess you have to strengthen the little muscles in your feet in order for them to actually feel comfortable, because I prefer to go running in moon boots, just anything with asthma. I'm sure that's wrong and inappropriate and just as bad for me as the 37 shots of tequila. Well, maybe not as bad for me, but probably not ideal.
Well, the idea of the barefoot shoes is that you're assimilating being barefoot, which means that you don't get injured. That was the point of us wearing those, because we couldn't be completely barefoot. It's very rough out here in Australia, underfoot. So it was having something between us and the ground. But everything, there's no support or anything in these shoes. So it means that you run correctly. And that's why we had no injuries, no blisters, no problems.
So I was discussing this with Marianne this morning as we were talking about this interview. And my first question that I said to her was, how did they get enough calories? And Marianne's first question was, how did their marriage survive? So let's kind of untangle both of those things in order of importance. How did you get enough calories?
Oh, well, calories is not an issue if you're raw vegan, because that's what you're getting all the time. And we were having the majority of our food was fruit, and that's where, the majority of your calories can come from. Now, a lot of people think that calories are things like rice and pasta and stuff like that, but that's empty calories. So it's calories going in, but there's no use to them. So you run out of energy very quickly or burn it off very, very quickly. Now, we weren't running very quickly. We were running a long, enduring distance. So we needed something that was going to continue to feed us and give us energy, for a long time. And that's what fruit and veg do, and certainly fruit. So, for instance, one banana is 100 calories. So with 30 bananas, if you eat 30 bananas a day, you've got 3,000 calories, and that's what you need to run a marathon. So, we could have just eaten 30 bananas a day. Well, we ate about 10 to 20 bananas a day, and then, other things as well. A kiwi fruit, for instance, that has 100 calories. So people don't realize that fruit is laden with calories, and at the same time with, 100% nutrients. So you don't have anything being taken away from what you're eating. It's all, beneficial. So we had no problem with that. We just ate a lot of it during the complete run, because obviously with consecutive marathons, you have to keep putting that fuel in to be able to have no recovery time, so to speak, to be able to recover during the sleep time and be able to run again the next day as if you'd never run a marathon the day before.
That's amazing.
It's that simple, really.
So I know a lot of our listeners, or all of our listeners are vegan, or we assume they are. And of course, I'm a longtime vegan myself. And we are used to getting that old question that everybody asks, where do you get your protein? And of course, we sort of roll our eyes and then realize, oh, the person asking it actually might want to know, because they're under a false, just a false idea that is oftentimes reinforced by mainstream media that you need protein from animal products. I can imagine that as a raw vegan marathoner who has ran 366 marathons in a row, you got asked this question quite often. Where do you get your protein?
Yes, we did get asked it a lot before we started. We did a lot of media interviews before we started, because, a lot of the media, especially the radio stations, they thought it was kind of cute that a couple of grannies were going to run around Australia. And then when they found out that we were going to do it on a raw vegan diet with barefoot shoes, and that we actually were going to go right around Australia, not just sort of run a marathon in each town or something, which is what they thought originally. Then they said, well, where do you get your protein? So yeah. I'm amazed at how many different ways you can say that. Anyway, we kind of told them that, well, you get your protein from the greens and from the fruit. And obviously, if that's all we're eating and we're able to do this, then clearly we're getting enough protein. And, we'd go into the whole thing about, what a myth it is about getting protein from animal products, or only getting protein from there. So by the time we got about probably halfway around, they stopped asking that question, because clearly we were getting enough protein. So we have never been asked that question since in mainstream media.
Oh, that's so funny.
Yeah. So especially since we've finished the run, they really are very interested, because we have proven without any shadow of a doubt that on a raw vegan diet, you can pretty much do anything.
Were you eating fat, though? Were you eating like nuts and seeds?
No. No, we have a low-fat raw vegan diet, because we were eating. We did need a little bit of fat at the end of every run. We would have, like a half an avocado or something. We don't do that now, but it's running consecutive marathons. It was necessary to be able to replace that. Otherwise, we would have been, losing muscle and so on. So over the period of time, but otherwise, no.
Okay. And did you get hurt at all? Any injuries?
Not from running.
No, from like
Does that go into the other question you had about our
yes,
marriage?
exactly. Well, how did you survive your marriage? Did you run with like a couples counselor driving beside you?
Yeah. Okay, so get this. We had already been together for 47 years, so we had it figured out. Anyway,
I don't even understand how you exist. Like, will you please be my couples counselor? Because I have so many questions that are inappropriate to this interview right now.
That's funny. So Alan's just walked in. He's got a big grin on his face.
Good morning. How are you this morning?
Hello, Alan. I hear that you like running.
Yeah, we do a bit. Yep.
I was just asking Janette how your marriage survived all of these marathons that you did every single day for over a year.
Well, actually, it was nice to have good company as we ran along. That made it easy for us. But yeah, there were days when we didn't say much, and there were days when we talked all day long.
Yeah. I mean, were you listening to music, or were you just listening to the world?
No, we don't have music. It's we find it's a bit dangerous when you're on the road. You don't become aware of the traffic and stuff like that. So we don't usually have music.
No, I understand you had to have a support team as well who was there for you for all of your needs in that process.
That's right. We had two vehicles. We had a car with a caravan and a smaller car that could look after us. Yep.
And where did you sleep and eat? If you had to stop at a certain time, you're not going to necessarily find like a Holiday Inn at each of these stops.
Yeah. No, we had a fairly large caravan, so that followed us all the way. And that was there when we stopped to take breaks and have lunch, and it was there for us to sleep in at night time.
Well, let's actually take a step back. I'd love to hear from each of you when and why you first went vegan.
That's a good question. When I was about 5 years old, I could have even been younger, but my family were having your usual meat and veg for your meal, and I could never swallow the meat. And I had problems with that all the time. I would, I'd be chewing and say, I don't want to eat the meat. And anyway, one day my mum said, look, so long as you eat your vegetables, that's fine. You don't have to eat the meat. So that was great. It was not until a little bit later on that I found out what meat was, and that it had actually come from animals. And as, we obviously were animal lovers as well, and as all children pretty much are, I was just mortified that we were eating meat, that meat was from animals. So that was the end of that. I wasn't going to eat meat anymore. But it wasn't until later that I actually stopped having animal products. So not realizing once again that, milk comes from animals, etc., and all the other products. And it wasn't until, later on that I sort of realized that what is happening to get that end product. So that was a no-brainer at that point. And, just stopped. So
yeah. So it started from like a visceral place of like, there's something icky about this. And then you kind of went with it. And it sounded, I love that you had that realization as a kid and that you were supported in that, because so many kids have that realization and their parents kind of like, since they're in denial themselves, oftentimes insist that their kids.
Yes, that's right. And well, intuitively children know because they haven't been taught anything different. So intuitively, we as humans should not be eating any animal products. And they know that. They don't particularly, like it, or, they find something not right with it. And as soon as little children realize what it actually is, until they've, before they've been told otherwise, they're just not going to make that choice really at all. I mean, we had interestingly, our oldest granddaughter, when she was little, same thing, 5 years old. The interesting way that she came to the realization not to eat meat was her family were visiting a graveyard, and she was standing there, And she said to her mom, "Why don't we eat people?"
Oh my God. Wow.
Yeah, I thought that was pretty brilliant because, yeah, why don't we? I mean, if we can eat animals, if we can kill and eat animals, why don't we, really? What's the difference? So a 5-year-old figured out the difference. And she wasn't really asking the question to get an answer to that question. She was just amazed that we were eating animals.
Yeah.
And that we're animals too. So, children already have that knowledge. It's, we get brainwashed as adults.
You're right. And I think it's really interesting that you brought up animal rights, both from 5-year-old you and your 5-year-old grandchild. Do you feel like animal rights are a big part of your motivation for the way that you live your life?
Oh, absolutely. The well-being of all living creatures is our responsibility, and humans as well. And certainly with animals don't have a voice they do have a voice, but they aren't able to communicate to others that, well, actually, no, I'd rather not be treated like this, or I'd rather not, be killed so that you can eat me, or I don't have, a government to protect me or anybody else. So, we're it. And that's, to me, that's just so obvious, it's ridiculous. But from the point of view of eating the actual end product, well, meat itself is it's dead. I don't know of anybody that actually goes and eats a live animal. So it's a dead product. Therefore, you get what you eat.
Right.
So it's very bad for your health. And that's just a no-brainer.
Well, I'm glad to hear you say it because, I've interviewed a few other people throughout the years who have been raw and from the raw world. And a lot of times I've seen that there's a disconnect between the kind of raw vegans and the ethical imperative behind veganism. And I wouldn't say that's across the board. I'm speaking completely anecdotally right now, that a lot of the people who I've spoken to throughout the years just sort of, they're in it for their health, and there's not a greater awareness. And, a lot of people I know will go to workshops about and conferences about raw veganism, and I'm always like, well, why not just take it one step further? You're already not eating animals, so why not get behind the ethical imperative behind it as well? So it's exciting, for me to hear that is part of your motivational force.
Oh, absolutely. But it's also quite often you'll find that vegans, whether they're raw or not, a lot of them don't get the health issue as well. So it works both ways. I mean, everything is connected. If we are eating plant-based diet for health reasons, then obviously that's connected to the fact that we're saving a lot of animals, and that's connected to the end result with the whole planet. So everything is connected, and the other way around as well. If you love animals and you're not going to eat them because you love animals, then you're naturally going to become more healthy if you look at the food that you are going to eat then. So, I mean, eating bowls of pasta and rice and every day isn't going to make you a healthy vegan. You're going to have to eat the plants and the fruits and the food that's actually got the nutrients in it. So it's taking that, like you say, it's taking that extra step, whichever way you're coming at a vegan lifestyle, is taking that extra step into there and making the connection with everything, all the choices that you make in life. And I think that's very important for people to understand.
So can you make a case for me and for our listeners for raw veganism?
Oh, well, being raw vegan is just that extra step from going, from being vegan. So if you're consuming a plant-based diet, then you're getting, and you're doing it correctly, then you're getting, your nutrients. But if you're cooking the food, then you are losing some of the nutrients and preparing the food and making it into something other than what it came naturally. So, like, for instance, if you're eating pasta, then that's originally come from a plant, but it's not recognizable as a plant anymore, and it's been processed to the point of, to become the product before you then cook it. So in heating a food, no matter how far beyond, the original food or plant that it came from, it is, then you're losing nutrients. So the heat actually basically burns off the nutrients. The other very important aspect is that with live plant-based foods, they have the essential enzymes in them to assimilate the nutrients from the food once you've eaten it. Now, if you heat it, you kill that enzyme. It's gone. So now you can't assimilate the nutrients. So from a health perspective, going raw or having the fruits and vegetables raw means you're getting 100% the best you can from the food. And that was, my reason for going 100% raw, because I wanted to do 100% the best I could for my health at the time of, being diagnosed with cancer. And so, doing 100% the best you can do is 100% the best you can do. That's what you're going to get as a result. Anything less than that is not 100%. And if you're okay with that, it's fine, but I wasn't. I wanted 100%. So if you don't cook the food, so if it's raw and it's plant-based, then you're going to get 100% nutrients and energy and all the enzymes and everything that comes naturally through nature in that food.
Yeah, I think that's true. I was talking to someone recently who has diabetes, and I gave him a copy of Michael Greger's book, How Not to Die. And he said he read the part about diabetes, and he said he was like, sure, I could go totally vegan, but it does say that, like, you could also just consume fish, and it's not as good as veganism. And I'm thinking, like, well, why why not? I didn't understand, but, I guess he's on his journey. But, you just brought up cancer, and can you talk about that a little bit? Tell me how old you were when you were diagnosed with cancer, and what kind of cancer was it?
Okay. So about 14 years ago, I was diagnosed with cancer, and I was basically, it was breast cancer, and it was, the diagnosis was that I had 6 months to live. Basically, that's the short form of the story. And so I wanted a refund on that. And
yeah, no kidding.
Yeah, so their suggestion was that I, have all the normal treatment of chemotherapy and radiation and, follow through with the drugs afterwards. And I thought, well, if I've got 6 months to live, does that make any sense? No. If I only have 6 months to live, then I better use it to change that prognosis. That was my immediate thought. And that's just coming from a background of taking responsibility for yourself and your own health, really, I think. That intuitive thing that we tucked away back there somewhere. So, well, without going into the full story, within that 6 months, that prognosis was completely turned around and I was completely clear of cancer. And, the full story is in my book. So I've written a book called Raw Can Cure Cancer. And that is based on my journey through that whole process. And obviously it was quite a journey, as it always is for everybody, and no matter which way you go. But the end result is that I'm here to tell the story and to show by example what's achievable if you do take responsibility for your own health and, start making changes that are going to make a difference. And sometimes it's not big changes you need to make. It can be very simple and easy, like it is to be raw vegan or vegan. It's very simple and easy. So many people say it's so complicated, and I'm thinking, how is it complicated? Again, you just pick up an apple and eat it. Like, how could it possibly be complicated? But anyway, that was quite the journey, but it definitely made us think more consciously about our lifestyle choices. And so it wasn't just the diet. That was an obvious first because, whatever, you are in control of what goes into your mouth. So, and therefore what goes into your body. So that's the first step you can take and make sure that you're getting that one right. Everything else, you have to start thinking about every choice that you make in life. And that's, that's it. Your whole life is choices. Everything you do, think, say, how you act is a choice. And if you think consciously about what the result of that choice is, then the choice may be a little more positive than it might have been otherwise. And that's the key, I think, is, being more conscious about the choices you make in life and what the results are.
Well, it sounds like you also take a very holistic approach to health and healing, because it sounds like it goes far, far beyond what you're consuming, but also about it sounds to me, Janette, that it's also about the energy you're putting out into the world and about the goodness that you want to bring back in. Am I extrapolating, or does that resonate?
Oh, that's absolutely correct. Yes, I mean, if we're all responsible, and think more, well, like I said, more consciously about everything that we're doing here, we might actually get the reason why we're here. We might actually, enjoy life. Like so many people say, oh, yeah, well, I have a healthy life, or I'm enjoying life. But I'm thinking we're thinking what we've realized in the last 14 years of being 100% raw vegan and living a conscious lifestyles is that you can't even imagine the possibilities and the opportunities and that are here for us. Like we're just going into such we're so much more conscious of enjoying life the way it should be. And so, of course, you want to share that information with everybody. You get really passionate about it. And it can make such a difference. But the big key is the fact that everything is connected. Why we're here, who we are, all the other creatures on the earth, why they're here and who they are, and what we're putting forward to the earth itself. So it's all connected.
Well, you've apparently gotten the connection right with your partnership to Alan. I don't understand how you've been married for so long and how you did all of these marathons and you spent all of this time together. I just backed that, all of this amazing stuff you've just told me. It all makes sense to me. But how did you do it? There were no tense moments at all?
Not really. I mean, I guess we are two different people and you don't always think exactly the same way. But it seems to me that the last 14 years of our married life have been much smoother than the first 30-odd years. And I think that's because we're much more conscious of each other and we're just happier because of the food we eat.
Well, you're both incredibly inspiring, so much. And I know that you have a lot of projects. You already mentioned your book. Just to kind of finally, can you tell us about the nutshell version of the books that you have and I hear there might be a documentary and how people can find out more about you, because people are going to want to after hearing about all that you're talking about.
Yes, absolutely. Well, the book Raw Can Cure Cancer was my first book, and I eventually wrote it 10 years after being diagnosed. And so that came out in 2012 when we were in training for the run. And then that's based on my journey with cancer and several other people's journey as well. So I've written it in a way that hopefully the reader can resonate with everything in the book. So it's not like reading a book and saying, well, that's for people that have cancer or, whatever. It's for everybody. So that's the first book. The second book that I wrote was after we finished the run, and it's called Running Out of Time. And that's based on the run, but on the message that it conveys. So the message, the reason why we did the run, for showing people what's possible. Apart from wanting to run around Australia or see Australia, and, we really wanted to bring that message in a way that was going to go mainstream, that was going to be accepted beyond any shadow of a doubt. And we sort of came up with the idea that a marathon is basically something that most people think of as very difficult to achieve. And if you do achieve it, it's incredible. And that's absolutely right. But if we took that one step further and made it something that was, way beyond anybody's imagination or unbelievable that you could do, then that would actually attract the attention of mainstream. And it did. So that was something that comes out in the book. And it goes into pretty much every day, how we felt, what we were talking about, how many, exactly how many steps we took, that type of thing. So it's got something for everybody in it in the way as it goes through the book, but it also, we also philosophize and talk about the reason why we're there. We had 4 charities that we were also raising awareness for, 4 charities that sort of were the the 4 bases of the reasons why we live a conscious lifestyle. So one was for children, one was for animals, one was for people with health issues, and one was for people who couldn't, that had disabilities. So it was sort of bringing all those aspects in as well. And so that's the second book. Since then, after we finished the run, of course, we were inundated with a lot of media and people all over the world wanting us to come and speak in the different countries. And that's basically what we've been doing in the last year or 2 years, now that we're into 2016. So 2014 and 2015, we spent all that time going around the world, speaking at different conferences and events, and also doing a lot of various different media worldwide as well. When we were speaking at one of the events, we were approached by a filmmaker, and he said, look, this message really needs to get out to the world. It's great that it's going into each event at different places around the world, but it needs to go mainstream. So I want to make a film. And we've been with that company ever since. It's a film production company based in Sydney, Australia. And we've been working with them ever since. As you can imagine, when we ran around Australia, it wasn't always possible or advisable to have a camera on us. We had some pretty extreme weather conditions and terrain conditions that we were running in, and it wasn't always possible. So a lot of the area we didn't get footage of, so we had to literally go out and do a bit of a rerun on location with the film production company over the last 2 years, doing all the cinematic photography as well, getting all the film footage. So we're about 98% there at the moment with the film. Last year, we took a short preview version of the film to the Cannes Film Festival in France. So that was accepted by Cannes, which was pretty big, really, to be able to get it in at all. And so we went over and screened it at the festival, and it was really well received. So that was very encouraging, because that is the extreme of mainstream, I would say. And for everybody to be so responsive to the message that it conveyed was really, really encouraging. So we've been working on, getting it to post-production stage, which is where it's at right now. So we're going into editing and color and, mixing and audio and everything. And that's something that now we have to start finding money for, because, up until now, the production company and ourselves have put everything into this film free of charge and free of time, because we're so passionate about wanting to get the message out. And now, of course, we need to have the professionals, finish the film. So we're on, now on a very big fundraising campaign to try and get this post-production in time so that we can get the feature film into Cannes Film Festival again this year.
How can people find out more about your work online and follow your journey and follow this film?
Absolutely. So if they go on our website, and that is rawveganpath.com, then there's a trailer to the film, and that will also link them through to our campaign to try and get it finished in time. And also on that website are the 2 books and a lot of different our story and so on there. We've also just started a YouTube channel, and very new to this. So we're just starting to put up our, various different videos on there for it to get out to more people. Because by the time we'd finished the run, we've got about 40,000 followers now on social network and through the website. So as you can imagine, I get a huge amount of questions and people asking, for advice and so on. And I really just have got to the point where I really can't answer every single one of them all the time.
Yeah.
Personally. So that's the reason for bringing on the YouTube channel. Apart from the film coming out, which will, obviously make a huge difference to a lot of people when they get that message in that way. But with the YouTube channel, we'll be able to answer those questions in a topic form. So we'll be taking those topics, from the questions and following through on them that way. So we're trying to cover all the bases as much as we can. As you know, we're older in years, so the technical side of things are a bit interesting, but we're getting there. It's not a problem.
I think you're doing just fine. You're doing amazingly well. It's so exciting to speak with you and to learn all about your efforts. Both of you, thank you so much for inspiring me so much. And I definitely want to go, more raw than I've been after talking to you. And it's just thrilling to hear all you're up to. I hope that you'll keep us posted about the film and about all of the other. Maybe next time you'll run across the world and figure out a way of running on water, because I think if anyone can, you can. So thank you, Janette and Alan. It was nice talking to you as well. Thank you both so much for joining us today on our hen house. We look forward to staying on top of your efforts.
Well, thank you so much. It's been our pleasure, and we look forward to connecting with everybody through Raw Vegan Path.
Yeah, thank you very much.
That was Janette Murray-Wakelin, and that was also Alan Murray. And as they mentioned, you can learn more at rawveganpath.com. And now let's get right into some news, shall we?
Our first story today is from the Albuquerque Journal, and it's entitled, New Mexico Succeeds in Legal Fight to Bar Horse Slaughter. And this is a case that's been going on for a while. I don't know whether you're familiar with the federal back and forth on horse slaughter. Due to campaigns by animal rights activists, HSUS in particular, horse slaughter has been defunded at the federal level. Slaughter involves federal inspection, and if the feds can't inspect, then horse slaughter is effectively stopped. And it was halted for many years. Then the money was restored in 2011. And some horse slaughter plants in New Mexico, Missouri, and Iowa began trying to start horse slaughtering again. But actually, it was derailed in 2014 when President Obama signed a budget measure that actually again withheld funding for inspection. So at the moment, horse slaughter isn't exactly illegal in the United States, but it's not possible to implement it. Nevertheless, this suit in New Mexico, which was rooted in the days when a horse slaughter plant tried to get going in New Mexico, Valley Meat Company, went forward and has recently been ruled to be unacceptable under New Mexican law. So even if the federal situation switches as it has before, it appears that these rulings from the judge effectively end any chance of a horse slaughter operation again opening in New Mexico. That's at least according to Bruce Wagman, who's the attorney for Front Range Equine Rescue, who was one of the plaintiffs here. And Bruce, of course, was on the Animal Law podcast a month or two ago on a totally different issue, but he's a great animal lawyer. So this is good news because we don't want horse slaughter in New Mexico, and this means that even if the federal situation changes, it won't come up again. However, the sad thing is that while this situation exists, it's still legal for horses to be exported to Mexico and Canada for slaughter. And that's a truly horrific situation. It's not an excuse to have horse slaughter in the United States, as many horse slaughter advocates say it is, but it's still a horrific situation and it must be stopped. We must have a bill passed at the federal level. The second story for today is from Grist, and it's going to make you mad. And it's called 7 Kinds of Government Subsidies Those Angry Ranchers Get That You Don't. And it's, of course, referring to the ranchers holed up at Murray-Wakelin, I don't actually know how you pronounce that, National Wildlife Refuge in Oregon, who, some of them have come out, but not all of them at this point. And it's just unbelievable how much money they are actually getting from the federal government, whom they, profess to hate and who they profess to be interfering in their rights to use the range that should belong to all Americans, and which does belong to all Americans, to graze their cattle on. And among some of the federal subsidies they've been receiving from big government in the few years, and these are just a few examples, the Hammonds, and that's the pair whose arson conviction inspired the action in Malheur. They had set fire in order to set fire to public lands, and they received almost $300,000 in federal disaster payments and subsidies from the mid-'90s to 2012. Ammon Bundy, who's the spokesperson for the Malheur action, got a $530,000 small business administration loan, which costs taxpayers at least $22,000. But, depending on whether he's repaid it, it might well have cost taxpayers a good deal more than that. The Hammonds also benefited from the services of Wildlife Services, our least favorite federal agency, the ones that come in at the behest of ranchers and kill animals. And they spent at least $8,000 on shooting 5 coyotes from the air for the Hammonds between 2009 and 2011. The Bundys, of course, graze cattle on federal land, and they pretend that that's supposed to be free. I don't know why. I mean, maybe I should just go build a house on federal land if it's all free and you can use it for whatever you want. Federal grazing fees are, of course, unbelievably cheaper than private grazing fees, and so they get a 93% discount when they use federal land, assuming they even pay it, which, of course, Cliven Bundy has grazed his cattle on federal land without a permit since 1993 and refused to pay the more than $1 million in fines and fees, which he owes. So they don't even pay the bit that they owe. And I didn't know this piece. Half of the grazing fees that ranchers pay the federal government, this really minimal fee that they pay the federal government, come back to benefit the ranchers. At least 50% of the grazing fees go to Range Betterment Fund. And these range improvement funds are used, quote, solely for labor materials and final survey and design of projects, presumably benefiting ranchers. That's a charming one, isn't it? Not only do they pay virtually nothing, but they're actually paying themselves. They get federal drought disaster relief. This is from the article, in a particularly ironic case last year, some Nevada ranchers illegally grazed their cattle on public land that had been closed to protect it during the ongoing Western drought, denying that the drought existed at all. But 2 of the families leading that rebellion had actually received $2.2 million in drought relief. So they get the money for drought relief, and then they cause damage to the lands that have been already damaged by drought. And the wild horse program, of course, the Bureau of Land Management routinely removes wild horses from public lands, and this program in 2015 cost the American public $75 million. Why are those wild horses removed? Not because anybody but ranchers don't want them there. The only reason they need to be removed, quote unquote, need to be removed, is to make room for cows. So, if you weren't mad before, I imagine you're mad now, that you were probably mad before. The next article is the seriously depressing one. It's from the New York Times, T-shirt weather in the Arctic. And this is an article about global warming, but it's an article, I'm including it in our news because it's specifically about animals. Personally, I feel that once global warming, climate change really kicks in, we're going to stop worrying about animals and species extinction because we're all going to be at war with each other for food. But I won't get into my truly and unbelievably depressing attitude about the future because presumably some of you have children, and even if you don't, you probably care about children. But anyway, this is about animals, and the animals are just going to be unbelievably screwed, and that makes it clear. And scientists are just kind of scrambling about what they're going to do. All of these shifts in temperature, even the relatively small ones, though they're getting bigger and bigger, that are already occurring, are just really fucking with these animals. If the lakes thaw earlier, the grayling, the Arctic grayling, a fish, breeds weeks earlier, and then they get bigger, and that might seem like a good thing. But then, because they get bigger, and the rivers get smaller, they end up in pools, unable to migrate, and then as a result, the bears and birds enjoy a big feast, but how long is that going to last? Because the Arctic grayling are not going to survive for long. So as you can see, it's a step-by-step progression, and it's just disaster after disaster for these animals. There was an extremely warm May in the Arctic, so some white-crowned sparrows bred earlier than usual, but then it got cold again. I mean, as we've seen, the weather is not only just getting warmer, it's getting more erratic. So this is a tragic article, and, as far as I'm concerned, let's just get ready for more tragedy because it doesn't look like anybody's going to be turning this around. All right, enough bad news. All right, so the planet's dying, but vegan food is expanding dramatically in New York City, and that's, after all, what we really care about. This is not one of those points where, Jasmine and I just focus on New York stories. We really try not to do this, but this one's unbelievable. It's the name of the article is Ravi DeRossi is expanding avant-garde and going meat-free at other restaurants. And this is from New York Eater. And we mentioned when we went to Avant-Garde, we talked about it on the podcast, which is a small restaurant in the East Village that apparently is doing very well. But the guy who owns it is a big restaurateur, and he owns as many as, 15 bars and restaurants, and he's planning to take them all vegan. I mean, not right away. It's a step-by-step process, but this guy has really become an ethical vegan, and he regrets his role in bringing meat products to people. He really wants to turn this around, and he makes some fabulous food. So as a first step, he has a bar, Mother of Pearl. I think that's in the East Village. It's an absolutely adorable bar. I've never actually been there because it wasn't vegan before, but I will be now. They have a picture of it here. He's taking that vegan. His restaurant, The Bourgeois Pig, will be changing its name to Ladybird and will be completely vegan. And his hit restaurant, Avant-Garde, is going to be expanding dramatically. I don't know whether they're going to be keeping the East Village location, but they are going to be opening a huge new place in Williamsburg, in Brooklyn, that will have numerous different projects. There'll be a bistro, which is kind of a casual restaurant, a tasting table, a vegan butcher, and in the basement, a commissary kitchen, which will serve as the base for numerous outlets around the city of a sandwich shop. This guy is serious, and he is taking veganism into a whole new place in New York City, and I could not be more excited. Also exciting is the fact that Chef Daphne Chang, who we have been fans of for years, she's behind the pop-up dinners at Exhibit C, which we've attended a number of times, and she's going to be heavily involved in this, and she is an amazing cook. So, sorry if you're not in New York, everybody.
Alessandra Sider is back today, and today she's going to be squawking with me about animal reproduction. Welcome back to our hen house, Alessandra.
Hello, Jasmine.
I am so excited to talk to you. It's been a while, and we have some fascinating things to go over today, which I know that you've been hard at work over in your senior year at Vassar. And you, in your copious free time, have been doing some research for this conversation we're about to have, which has to do with something that we chatted about in the past when we were talking about the reproductive capacities of non-human animals.
Yes, ma'am. I have taken time out of my leisurely schedule to research the reproductive capacities of a couple fascinating non-human animals. I can't remember which past interview it was, but we somehow got on the subject of like how fascinating certain reproductive systems are. And I was like, hey, I should do a review about that. And you were like, yes, you should. So here we are.
Yeah, it's actually... For you, it makes more sense since you work for our hen house, but for other people, they might be surprised to learn that if you hang out with me for more than 10 minutes, it's likely that you will leave with an assignment.
Probably.
Yeah, probably. So this I'm so excited about because I don't actually know too much about the reproductive capacities of animals, human or non, for that matter. And by the way, I actually think that the reproductive capacities of humans it just like blows my mind. Like every now and then I'm like humans make little humans. So anyway, today we're not going to be talking about humans. We're going to be talking about a few really, really fabulous non-human animals and their reproductive capacities.
Yes, indeed. So I want to start off by just going through the animals who are exploited for their reproductive capacities. Animal agriculture, which we as vegans focus on a lot, tends to take severe advantage of the reproductive systems of non-human animals, particularly female non-human animals. So like female cows are continuously artificially inseminated to produce milk. They have to be pregnant to produce that milk, and then their babies are taken away from them forcefully. And then hens are bred to produce way more eggs than is healthy for them. So, they get calcium deficiencies and they just get horribly ill. And if you remember my past review on how male animals are exploited for their reproductive capacities too, you'll know that bull semen is forcefully extracted to artificially inseminate the female cows that I was talking about earlier.
Some people just never think about that. I think it was like a few years into me thinking about the exploitation of the reproductive capacities of farmed animals before I was like, the boys, the cows. It's so interesting.
Yeah, everyone gets the short end of the stick. But like the reproductive capacities of animals, especially certain animals, are really, really fascinating. So I thought that instead of exploiting the animals' reproductive systems, we should appreciate them for their immense complexity and variation.
I'm so in. Let's I was going to say let's celebrate, but maybe that's an overstatement. Let's appreciate.
Let's throw a party.
Yeah.
So, I mean, first, just to start off, I just want to issue a disclaimer of sorts, I guess, about like the inaccuracy of the biological categories that we have available to us, because typically we think about like you have male and you have female, right? And sex as well as gender exist along a spectrum. So I'm going to be using the terms male and female to denote sexes, just because like that, those are the words that we have to talk about non-human animals' sexes. But I just want to let y'all know that like it's much more complicated than that. There aren't just two.
I appreciate that very much.
Yeah, so let's get started. First, I want to talk about kangaroos. They are fascinating.
I have a stuffed kangaroo, and by which I mean like a stuffed animal, not a stuffed kangaroo.
That's good. That's a good differentiation. Mm-hmm. Okay, good. Well, then you're familiar with them.
I have a leg up.
Perfect. So their mating usually takes place during the rainy season, while food is plentiful. And the really fascinating thing is that the female is able to delay the attachment of the embryo to the fetus, which means that she's actually able to control when she will be pregnant.
Oh my God. Right. That's unbelievable.
Right. So should her young die or mature enough to leave her, then she'll immediately become pregnant again, like if she doesn't allow them to be born or whatever. So she can like breed all year long if the conditions are right. Like if something in the environment is telling her that like, oh, you shouldn't have a baby, she can be like, okay, I won't. And then as soon as they're back to normal, she can be like, hey, let's have a baby now.
I don't feel like I should actually confess this, and yet here I go. I was watching Real Life with Lisa Ling on Netflix last night, and there's an episode about these people who, oh, it's so creepy and weird. It's these women who get sperm donors that are specifically like geniuses or Nobel Peace Prize winners, or just like these, people who have a very, very high IQ. And it was so weird and creepy and wrong and icky. And there was this one part where they said that they were able to freeze the sperm for 29 years and someone was able to still wind up with a child from that sperm. So I don't know. I'd rather be a kangaroo. I think it's a lot simpler.
Yeah, I agree with that. I don't think the kangaroos are worried about their children being geniuses.
Yeah.
But so a joey is a kid kangaroo. They're born 30 days after conception, at which point they are no larger than a lima bean, weigh no more than 0.3 ounces, and are blind. But despite this, they are able to climb from the mother's uterus into the pouch. Like, they come out of the mother's uterus and they climb up of her leg.
Okay, I think it's vaguely exploitative to watch this, and yet I've watched it on YouTube. And even though I think that, like, part of me is like, I don't want to watch this because what were the conditions that brought the camera person there to film it, but whatever. That being said, I've done it, and I think people should because it's absolutely jaw-dropping.
Oh, my God. Yeah, yes. It's incredible. And then so once there, the joeys have access to all the milk that they need, and they stay in the pouch for 1 to 1.5 years, at which point they can leave. So what's also amazing is that the female kangaroo can actually determine the sex of her young offspring. So she can determine when she has them, she can determine their sex. Research shows that in the early years, when she mates, she wants all of her young to be female. And then as she gets older, she wants them to be male. And that's not really understood why, but it's pretty cool nonetheless.
That's unbelievable. I love me a kangaroo. I love them.
Yes. So that's pretty cool. The next animal I want to talk about are seahorses.
See, I don't have a stuffed seahorse. I have to
Jasmine,
admit.
you got it. You didn't prepare for this review.
No, I didn't. But tell me about them. I don't know anything about seahorses except for what they look like, kind of.
Yeah. So in seahorses, the male seahorses are actually the ones to undergo pregnancy, which is different than in the human kingdom. So
in fact, even I knew that.
In fact, Jasmine knew this. So the male seahorse has a little pouch on its stomach in which the seahorse carries the babies. They can carry as many as 2,000 babies at a time. And their pregnancy lasts from about 10 to 25 days, just depending on the specific species of seahorse. And the reproductive process begins when a male and a female seahorse do a daily pre-dawn dance for like a couple of weeks. Isn't that cute?
Is it a tap dance?
Yes. Yeah.
They shuffle ball change?
Absolutely. They dance to Bette Midler.
I thought so.
Yeah. So they'll intertwine their tails and they swim together, and eventually they engage in a true courtship dance, which is like the culmination dance. And that can last as long as 8 hours, and it ends with the female depositing her eggs into the male's pouch. And scientists think that, interestingly, that this courtship behavior is designed to synchronize the movements of the two animals so that the male is ready to receive the specific eggs that the female has by getting to know her, which is fascinating. Totally fascinating.
I'm still on the fact that it's the males that carry the pregnancy.
Yeah, I mean, technically human men can have babies if they have uteruses, right? Like trans men. But if you're born with a uterus and you're gendered as female, no, you're not going to have a baby. So it's cool.
Seahorses. Super cool. Lots to learn from the seahorse family.
Yes. And one more thing on seahorses, even though seahorse dads go the extra mile to give birth, the parents don't provide their offspring with any care or protection after they're born. So fewer than 5 infant seahorses in every 1,000 survive to adulthood, which may help to explain why the litters are so large, why they carry 2,000 eggs at once. So that's kind of sad. I don't really know why the seahorses do that.
Aw. Yeah, I was going to say that's 2,000. I mean, I was really surprised by that. I was overpopulation much, but I guess that makes more sense, though it is sad.
Yeah, but we love seahorses.
We do.
So the last animal that I want to talk about are ducks.
Yay.
Love the ducks.
I don't have a stuffed duck either. Clearly, I'm falling down on the job here.
Jasmine, I actually had the chance to make friends with a lot of ducks this summer while I was working at a sanctuary back home, and they're great. I didn't get to see them reproduce, but they were wonderful.
Well, they probably waited until it was the perfect romantic moment, and I doubt you were around for that.
That's true. Yeah.
Yeah. So tell us about ducks. I actually think the most I know about ducks is from cartoons.
Sure. Well, let me start off by telling you the name of an article that might give you some insight as to why duck reproduction is interesting. So it's an article on the Wired.com. It's called "Female Ducks' Twisty Tracks Defend Against Screwy Males."
Sorry, what was it called again? Can you just say one more time?
Female ducks' twisty tracks defend against screwy males.
Okay, I just like that.
Yeah. So apparently, female duck vaginas are very spirally and squiggle shaped, which makes it really difficult for unwelcome male ducks to reproduce with her. But for a mate that the female approves of, she can relax all of the twists and the turns to let him reproduce with her. And a male duck, his penis is corkscrew shaped in order to fit into the female's really complicated vagina. It's so fascinating, and it's like the blocks that you played with when you were a kid.
Do you think that there is some underground subculture of ducks, duck indie media, and they have a podcast and they're talking about human penises and vaginas right now?
I hope so.
And they're like, you guys, it's just so weird. It's like not spirally. I don't know. This is weird.
Yeah. Probably. It's so aerodynamic.
Exactly. Wow, Alessandra, I had no idea that the conversation today would bring us to this place.
Here we are.
Moving on.
I mean, hey, those are all the animals I got for you today.
That is fascinating. I have to say, I know so much more about kangaroos, seahorses, and ducks than I ever thought I would. And I also feel inspired to learn more about farmed animals and just, reproductive capacities in general of so that we can not only learn all of the ways that humans have decided to exploit these non-human animals, but also just to appreciate them in their natural ways, in their natural habitats, in their natural environments, and when they're actually wanting to get down and dirty on their own, as opposed to us extracting their semen and forcibly inseminating it into others.
Yes, I 100% agree.
Well, thank you so much. Remind our listeners where they could find you on the internet machine.
Yeah, so y'all can find me at my blog, chickpeasanchange.wordpress.com. And maybe you can do a little bit of research on animal reproduction yourselves in the meantime.
I totally want that to happen. If you do, then let us know what you come up with, and maybe we'll squawk about it here on our Hen House podcast. Thanks for joining us, Alessandra. We'll talk to you very soon.
My pleasure.
That was Alessandra Sider, and my name is Jasmine Singer, and this was the 318th episode of Our Hen House. You could go to ourhenhouse.org to find out more about the work we do, and you can access our other podcasts there as well, the Teaching Jasmine How to Cook Vegan podcast, as well as the Animal Law podcast. You could also see our online magazine there. You could have access to our ebook publishing arm, Hen Press. You could find our Facebook, our Twitter, our Instagram. We are Instagramming more, by the way, ever since Michael Heron joined us here at Our Hen House. So find us on Instagram and Twitter at Our Hen House, and Facebook. We're facebook.com/Our Hen House. We are a 501c3 nonprofit organization, so that means we are reliant on our listeners and our viewers, and on you, really, if you're listening to this, to support our work to change the world for animals. So I hope that you will support that work by becoming a flock member today. And if you're already a flock member, do you maybe know someone else who wants to become a flock member? I hope so, because we really can't do this work without your support. So please remember why you find Our Hen House valuable and keep us going. So go to ourhenhouse.org and click on donate. You could become a flock member for a one-time donation of $150. It's makes you a flock member for 1 year, or a recurring donation of $15 a month or more. And you could also dedicate a podcast episode for $200, and you'll also become a flock member for that. If you become a flock member, we will send you an Our Hen House tote bag. It is ethically sourced and vegan made. It touts our tagline, change the world for animals. And we will also get you into the flock Facebook group. We'll give you login information so you can access the special flock area of our website. You'll always be the first to be in the know. We have some great giveaways coming up for our flock on the flock Facebook page, by the way, if you're listening to this. So be sure to tune in over there at our Hen House's Facebook page just for the flock. If you have any questions for us or comments or anything like that, you could email us at info@ourhenhouse.org. While you're at it, I hope you'll leave us a friendly review on iTunes or Stitcher or however else you're listening to this, and be sure to spread the word, because we are very much word of mouth. So that's so important to us in terms of getting the word out there about our efforts to change the world for animals. So thank you in advance for that. And I have a new book out. It is called Always Too Much and Never Enough. It is a memoir, and it's very much rooted in how I discovered pieces of myself that I had been suppressing because I was being betrayed by Big Ag. So as I found my own authenticity, I also was able to embrace life as a vegan and as an animal rights activist. So it goes into a lot of stuff, including how I lost nearly 100 pounds, and including how I came to terms with being a bullied kid and then adult. So I hope you read it. You could get it wherever books are sold. If you like it, please leave us a friendly review on Amazon or Barnes & Noble or IndieBound or Goodreads or wherever else. Thank you in advance for that. And there is also an audiobook available. You can download it, or you can get the CD. So it's called Always Too Much and Never Enough, and you can learn more also on my website, jasminesinger.com. There's no E on Jasmine, and I hope that you like it. So Thanks so much for joining us for 318. This was such a great episode. I loved this episode. Such great guests. And I had a fun time. I hope you did too. I'll talk to you next week. Bye.